Cataracts. What are the roles of methylglyoxal and the Polyol Pathway? Are they independent or are they linked? Hi, I'm Chris Masterjohn and I have a PhD in nutritional sciences. I am not a medical doctor and nothing contained in this episode may be construed as medical or nutritional advice of any kind or a substitute therefore. This episode is meant purely as scientific education. If you wish to act on any ideas presented in this episode, please consult your physician first and never take anything herein as a reason to contradict medical advice. With that said, enjoy the episode.
Okay, Gary Krieger asks, could you please compare and contrast cataractogenesis, meaning the formation of cataracts, as it relates to the polyol pathway and MGO, meaning methylglyoxal? Thank you. And then he adds, are they independent or related causes? So I think I understand what you're asking, Gary. So there's pretty strong evidence that cataracts are driven by glycation of lens proteins. And although the word glycation implies that it's sugar behind it, I did my doctoral dissertation on methylglyoxal, and I've made very clear in what I've written and spoken elsewhere that that's not true. That's kind of a misnomer, and that most glycation happens within the body driven by small dicarbonyls that are actually derived at least from ketones, meaning fat, and carbohydrate, and probably also released through amino acid metabolism. And so in this process of glycation driven by these dicarbonyls, the most prominent one of which is methylglyoxal, they cause proteins to stick together. And if you glycate the lens proteins stick together, and that's a key process in the generation of cataracts. So I believe what Gary is asking is the polyol pathway activation and methylglyoxal independent causes of cataract formation, or are they related to one another? And the answer is a little bit of both. If independent means unrelated, then they're related, not independent. But they are independent in the sense that you could have more of one. You could do something that increases one and not the other, or at least disproportionately increases one versus the other. So the polyol pathway, I think the best way to describe that is under conditions of severe hyperglycemia, where you have too much sugar to be disposed of in the normal routes. You can use the sugar to synthesize polyols, and polyols are, in chemistry, something that ends in OL is an alcohol. Sugars are alcohols, and when something has multiple alcohol groups added to it, you wind up with something called a polyol. So the key anyway, polyol chemistry is not the key thing here. The key thing here is in the polyol pathway, you consume NADPH. And NADPH is needed to recycle glutathione. Glutathione is needed, among other things, to detoxify methylglyoxal. And methylglyoxal causes cataracts. Now, that's not to say that there's, that there aren't other things going on. I mean, certainly glutathione is also needed to defend against oxidative stress. And, but then again, oxidative stress might not be the only way that oxidative stress contributes to cataracts, but oxidative stress increases methylglyoxal generation in part by decreasing the activity of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, or GAPDH, which is the enzyme within glycolysis that is responsible for clearing what are known as triose phosphates, which is, if you know glycolysis, this is glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and dihydroxyacetone phosphate. So this is probably beyond what maybe what you wanted me to get into, but just in case it's not, since I'm down this pathway already, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and dihydroxyacetone phosphate, which you can conceive of as basically on their way to being half of a sugar molecule, they interconvert with one another, and the intermediate in between them can spontaneously dephosphorylate and generate methylglyoxal. And that is one of the origins of methylglyoxal. As I said before, you can also derive methylglyoxal from fat through ketogenesis, because acetone, which is a byproduct of ketogenesis, and if you get ketone breath that smells like nail polish remover for the ladies or paint thinner for the dudes. Okay, I know some dudes might want to wear the nail polish. Some women might want to paint houses. I know. Okay, so acetone is metabolized in a 2-step process to generate first acetol and then methylglyoxal, right? So now, so methylglyoxal can be derived from more than one pathway, and NADPH does multiple things, glutathione does multiple things, and so hyperglycemia driving the polyol pathway may do many things. However, they're connected in the sense that polyol pathway means lower NADPH, which means less recycling of glutathione, which means less detoxification of methylglyoxal. Less glutathione also means more oxidative stress, which means less GAP-DH activity, which means more triose-phosphates, which means more triose-phosphates spontaneously dephosphorylate to produce methylglyoxal in the glycolytic pathway. And so, at least in the context of hyperglycemia, those two are going to be very connected, because the polyol pathway via NADPH depletion is driving both an increase in methylglyoxal production and a decrease in methylglyoxal detoxification, which means more methylglyoxal, which means more glycation of lens proteins, which means more cataracts. However, it's possible to drive the polyol pathway without hyperglycemia, and through galactose consumption. And one hypothesis is that drinking milk beyond the capacity to metabolize the galactose can drive cataracts, which is through an alternative means of activating the polyol pathway. But like I said before, you would be wrong to conclude from this that, okay, you should just go on a milk-free ketogenic diet and thereby avoid the polyol activation, because you might wind up with more methylglyoxal as a result of more acetone, in which case that really has nothing to do with activating the polyol pathway. So when the polyol pathway is activated, they're very connected. But methylglyoxal does not have to be connected to the polyol pathway. All right, Gary, I hope that answers your question. And I apologize if that was more detailed than you wanted.
This episode was part of a Q&A for members of the CMJ Masterpass, a buyer's club with exclusive and massive discounts on your favorite premium foods and health products, including pasture-raised and wild meat and seafood, supplements, sleep accessories, water filters, phototherapy devices, and much more. As a bonus, you also get to participate in monthly private Zoom Q&As with me. You can join the Masterpass at chrismasterjohnphd.com/masterpass and use the code Q&A, spelled out as Q-A-N-D-A, Q&A, for a 10% lifetime discount. For the remainder of 2020, I will be working full-time on finishing my Vitamins and Minerals 101 book while reserving a portion of my time for consulting clients. You can pre-order my book at chrismasterjohnphd.com/book. In my consulting, I am neither a medical practitioner nor a coach. I serve as your data analyst and your strategist. I teach you scientific principles of health and wellness, help you analyze your data, and help brainstorm actionable strategies. You can sign up for a consultation at chrismasterjohnphd.com/consultations. I will try to respond to comments here when I can, but my presence will be intermittent while I'm finishing my book. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next episode.